Today, we are looking into the void between stars at Interstellar Comet 3I Atlas. This is only the third confirmed object in history to crash our solar system's party from the outside. But we aren't here to discuss the ice and dust of the comet itself, which, appeared scientifically pretty normal. We are debating the institutional machinery that processed its arrival.
Right. Specifically, that stark contrast between the frantic, high-stakes mobilization of telescope resources behind closed doors and the incredibly calm, almost sterilized messaging that was presented to the public.
So the central question is this. Was the handling of 3I Atlas a triumph of efficient scientific consensus? Or was it an example of institutional silence, where confidence was sort of manufactured before the data was actually fully processed? I'll argue the former. This was a mature scientific response. We saw it, we identified it, and we avoided causing any unnecessary alarm.
And I'm going to take the opposing view. I think the timing of that reassurance, the fact that it arrived before the data was fully analyzed, signals a kind of silence of omission. It feels less like organic discovery and, more like a controlled narrative that was designed to kill curiosity.
Well, to understand my position, you have to look at the immediate technical response. When 3I Atlas appeared, the community moved with ruthless efficiency. We immediately pivoted major ground-based facilities like the massive survey scopes at Apache Point and the historic Hale telescope at Palomar to capture the object's light. And we weren't just taking pictures, we were capturing spectra.
Breaking the light down into chemical fingerprints.
Exactly. And those fingerprints were unambiguous. We saw the absorption lines for water ice, dust, carbon-bearing compounds. It was a textbook comet. And because the data matched our standard models so perfectly, NASA and other bodies just issued these clear, reassuring FAQs. They didn't hold emergency briefings because there was no emergency. It was a responsible move to nip sensationalism in the bud.
Responsible is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. My issue isn't with the data. I'm not suggesting a cover-up of aliens or anything like that. My issue is the order of operations. In rigorous science, you gather data, you argue, you model, and then you conclude. Here, the conclusion that the object was understood and safe was broadcast to the public before the detailed spectral analysis was even circulated to the wider academic community.
But if the initial look confirms it's a duck, you don't really need a peer-reviewed paper to tell people it quacks.
But initial looks in astronomy are notoriously tricky. 3I Atlas was surrounded by what I'd call a silence of emphasis. With the previous two interstellar visitors, Oumuamua and Borisov, there was this healthy, messy public debate about what they were. This time, that uncertainty was aggressively muted. It just feels like the essential waiting period of science, where we admit we don't know yet, was skipped entirely.
I think you're conflating efficiency with conspiracy. If the spectra from Apache Point shows standard carbon signatures, why would you manufacture an artificial debate? That's not science, that's just theater.
But it's not about manufacturing debate. It's about acknowledging the limits of speed. You cannot run long-term trajectory modeling in 48 hours. Yet the narrative was set in stone that quickly. And that brings me to the resource paradox. We were told this object was, quote, standard, boring, nothing to see here. Yet the allocation committees for these telescopes, which are incredibly competitive, threw everything they had at it.
Well, of course they did. Normal doesn't mean unimportant.
But you don't commandeer the Palomar Observatory for a standard snowball unless there's some high urgency. The behavior of the institutions, the frantic data gathering, it completely contradicted the calm down message that was sent to the press.
I disagree. The urgency comes from rarity, not danger. This is only the third visitor in recorded history. Our sample size was 2 prior to this. Prioritizing it is just standard procedure because we have such a limited window before it goes dark again. The smoothness of the response was simply the system working correctly to maximize the science in a short time frame.
Perhaps. But let's look at what that science actually showed. This connects to what I'd call the familiarity anomaly. 3I Atlas behaved exactly like a comet from our own solar system. The way it brightened as it got closer to the sun, the way it outgassed, it was a mirror image of our local stuff.
Which is a massive victory for our theoretical models.
Is it? Or is it suspicious? Interstellar space is vast and chaotic. We expect diversity. We expect things born around other stars to look different. When a visitor travels light years only to look exactly like a comet from the Kuiper Belt, well, that is statistically weird. That should have sparked a huge debate about cosmic homogeneity. Instead, crickets.
You're framing consistency as a failure. The fact that the visitor fit our expectations, familiar ices, familiar carbon, that validates our understanding of universal chemistry. It proves that physics and chemistry work the same way in the void as they do here. That isn't suspicious. That's profound. It tells us the recipe for building solar systems might just be universal.
Sure, familiarity can be profound, but it can also be a blind spot. If an object from an entirely different star system behaves this similarly, it raises a haunting question. How many times have we seen this before and missed it? How many local comets were actually interstellar imposters? Those are the exciting, dangerous questions that get people hooked on science. But they weren't in the press release.
Because the press release is designed for clarity, not for philosophy.
I'd call it a silence of omission. The language was technically accurate, but it was intellectually incurious. It felt designed to close the book before the public even had a chance to start reading it.
Look, the goal was to remove uncertainty, to prevent the kind of hysteria we saw back in 2017. Remember all the wild theories about solar sails and alien probes with Oumuamua? That just distracted from the real science. By clearly stating it is a comet, we allowed the scientists to work without the noise of conspiracy theories. We prioritized truth over engagement.
But you sacrificed the most beautiful part of science in the process, the mystery. The most striking thing about 3I Atlas wasn't what we learned, but how quickly we were told there was nothing more to learn. You traded wonder for quiet.
We traded drama for data. To summarize my position, the handling of 3I Atlas proves that the scientific community has matured. We can now identify, categorize, and explain interstellar visitors without needing to resort to hype. The silence you're hearing was merely the sound of a system working correctly, processing data from Palomar and delivering a verdict.
And I'll just maintain that the real anomaly wasn't the comet, but the confidence surrounding it. We skipped the messy, uncertain phase where discovery actually happens. The response was too controlled, too fast, and ultimately it robbed the public of the chance to look up and wonder, what if?
3I Atlas is now heading back into the dark between the stars. I think we can agree that it's gone.
It is. But the precedent set by this quiet response will shape how we handle the next visitor. And we need to watch the silences in the records, just as we watch the data.
Indeed. Thank you for listening to The Debate.